Hello and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sport. And today we're going to be doing a South Africa versus Wales team of the series, which is very difficult to do considering that the Springboks made all the changes throughout the series, whilst Wales had a very consistent 23, which only really changed due to injury. And as a result, as you'd imagine, it's pretty stacked with Welsh players. And I think that, South African players had to be pretty special to be able to eclipse their Welsh counterparts, or on the other hand, their Welsh counterparts had to be pretty poor for them not to make the team because of just a game time issue. Because obviously, as I said, the Springbok players all changed. For example, very few of them played the first test, played the second test. I thought the first test was a pretty ordinary performance. So the third test was a pretty good performance from a lot of the Springbok players. But the question is, did that then, was it enough to justify putting them ahead of some Welsh players who've been playing pretty consistently throughout the test series? So it was quite a difficult team to pick. And we're going to go through it in a minute. But before we do, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. I also want to know what your opinions are. Let me know what you think of the team down in the comments below. Are there any other players who you felt really stepped up and could have justified their inclusion within the 15? But without any further ado, this is what I have gone with. And I think it's currently sitting at a 10-5 split in favor of the Welsh. And to be fair to them, they were only outplayed in one game. They lost by a single point, won by a point. They were two very close games, and they did win the game. So, they played well for two matches, and then didn't play particularly well for the last. So it's difficult. You don't want to be that person that discredits everything they did because of poor performance in the last. So in the front row, Gareth Thomas, Dylan Lewis are my two props. I thought that they were just pretty consistent throughout the campaign. I think in the last test, we did start to see South Africa get a bit more scrum dominance. But I thought that those two players had to step up. And I think that Dylan Lewis was very impressive in the first test. Gareth Thomas was pretty consistent throughout. They did have pretty moments where they were out-scrummed. But the issue then comes in, well, who do you put in from South Africa? And you're thinking, well, Trevor Nyakane had one very good game, one very average game. Frans Herbert had a pretty average game and a decent game. Stephen Kitshoff, I thought, was probably the one prop who I thought would have been justified selecting. I thought he was used off the bench to very good effect on two occasions, but he probably played a total of about 50 minutes across the three tests, whereas someone like Gareth Thomas, I reckon, played well over sort of 180 minutes, and a reasonable 180 minutes as well. Somebody who I thought was pretty easy to select, though, was Malcolm Marx. I thought he was one of the best players across the three-match series. Whenever he came on, he made a big difference. He's so good over the ball. He's such a good ball carrier. His line-out work now is very good. He's also got a very good skill set. I do think that he is probably the form hooker in the world right now. And I think that I'm very much looking forward to that French test at the end of the year, where we get to see him and Bongi taking on the likes of Julien Marchand, because I think those three are playing some very good rugby, and we basically get to see probably, arguably, the best hookers in the world right now going toe-to-toe. In the second row, I'm going to have Eben Etzebeth and Will Rowlands. I thought Eben Etzebeth, he had man of the match performance in that last test. I thought he played through all three tests. I thought he was pretty decent in the second test, and was pretty awful in the first test, but was pretty all right. So generally, I thought that he was the best lock. For example, for us, it's pretty easy to say he was our best lock throughout the series. I was very impressed with Will Rowlands, who did have to shift across to flank in the final test. I know they are, in theory, both number 4 locks, but I am going to cheat a bit. But I was very impressed with what I saw with Will Rowlands. I thought that he arrived with some very good physicality. I thought that he very much upped his game down here in South Africa. So congrats to him. And I thought Leo Diago was pretty decent when he played, but maybe didn't play enough to justify selecting him ahead of Will Rowlands. I thought Adam Beard was a bit of a passenger through the series. He wasn't bad, but I kind of expected a bit more from him. The loose trio, I've got Tommy Reffel, Dan Lydiate, and Kwaka Smith. I thought these were actually relatively simple picks, because I don't think that any of the South African loose forwards were consistently great across the three tests, except for Kwaka Smith, who came off to the bench to brilliant effect in the first test. I thought he really added a lot of impetus to the Springbok team. And then he came on pretty early in the third test, and I thought he had an absolute blinder. Could very well have been man of the match. Was absolutely everywhere. And now people, in fact, are even calling for him to potentially start against New Zealand because he is playing so well. But I thought that Tommy Reffel and Dan Lydiate were tremendous for Wales. Faletau was a big miss for them in the third test, but those two, especially as a combination, where we saw the defensive work of Dan Lydiate, Tommy Turnover, as the nickname is quickly growing. And I think, to be fair, I think the three of them would be quite an interesting loose trio, just in terms of ridiculously on the ball work. I mean, that wouldn't be particularly good in terms of, there are not too many, but line options to Dan Lead. In fact, yeah, I think this could work. Wouldn't be the most physical of loose trios, but it would be an interesting loose trio. Halfback combination, I've gone with Kieran Hardy and Dan Biggar. I thought Pollard played very well in the third test, but was pretty average in the second test. Alton Yankees was pretty poor in the first test. Dan Biggar maybe wasn't his best test series that we've ever seen him play, but I thought he was actually pretty good. I thought he was pretty consistent from week on, week out. Kicking was very good. His leadership, I thought, has grown a lot, and he pretty much embraced physicality. So I thought that Dan Biggar had a pretty solid test series. Was easily the most consistent number 10. And Kieran Hardy, I think, for me, was one of the Welsh, well, not necessarily fines because he had played before, but I think he was one of the Welsh players who will leave the series going, I reckon that number 9's in the bag. He played brilliantly. I thought that his box kicking, he had it on a dime. He thought he controlled the games really well, and I was very impressed with what I saw. For South Africa, I mean, if I had to pick somebody else, I probably would have gone Jaden Hendricks up. He was very good for South Africa across the 2 tests he did play. Very much pushing for that number 9 jersey, which not too many people, bar maybe Kobus Reinach, has really in the past couple of years. But also very much suits the Bok game plan, which I think does put him very much into contention to potentially playing moving forward. With the Wings, I've gone with Josh Adams and Louis Rees-Zammit. It was a really poor series for South African Wings. We didn't see any particularly big performances, did we? Michael Zuma-Pimpy was very quiet in the first game and didn't have much to do in the third game either. Apelele Fassi, I thought really struggled in the second game. I thought Curly Orange played pretty well in the third game, but he only played one match. And Chesson Colby had a reasonable first game, and then a pretty quiet second game until he then broke his cheekbone pretty early on and had to be substituted. So there wasn't actually that many options. But to be fair, I thought that Josh Adams had a pretty decent series, and I thought Louis Rees-Zammit, especially that first test, scoring a brace, always looked very dangerous with the ball in hand. In the centre, I've gone with Nick Tompkins, probably the most consistent number 12 across the series. I was actually kind of hoping a little bit more from him. Not to say that he was bad, because I thought he was actually pretty good, but I was really excited to see what he could do. And I don't think he had the sort of impact that I was hoping to really see from him. But he was a very consistent at 12. Damien Dale-Lindy, I thought was solid. Maybe not his best games, but pretty decent. I think his people talking about him not being in form, I think is a pretty poor assessment of him. David Wilson looked very comfortable at 12, but only played there for about a half. And Andre Esterhuizen, didn't play as much in the second game. I've gone with Lukhanyo Ahmed out centre, which could be a bit of a controversial pick, but I felt that George North was very quiet in the first 2 games, came alive in the third game. I thought George North looked much better in the third game, looked a bit more like what we expected. But I thought Lukhanyo, was pretty good in the first game. I know he did play in the wing in the third game. We had to switch, but I thought generally he was probably the player that looked the best at outside centre. So could have gone with George North. Could have been pretty easy to justify it. But I'm going to look at Lukhanyo because he looked, for me, he was the best player at 13. And then 15, I'll go with Daniel Willemse. And what a series he had. I think arguably up for player of the series if there were to be one. He looks so at home in his Springbok jersey at the moment. And in the first test, switched to playing at first receiver quite a lot when they benched Alton Yankees, brought on Willie Leroux. In the second test, came on towards the end, didn't have much to do. But in the third test, I thought we saw the coming of age Damien Willemse. Came on, he was started at 15, then had to move to 12, looked very good at 12. In fact, some people saying that he could actually be pushing Damien Dale-Lindy for that number 12 jersey, which I don't think too many people would have expected a year ago. I think, as I said, if I were to give him man in the series, he would be mine, especially from a Springbok point of view, because I thought that he really did come of age, and we've seen a very different Damien Willemse, and the Damien Willemse we've all been hoping to see. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Let me know what changes you would make to the side. I'd love to know what your opinion is. Please also do smash like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steven. I'll chat to you soon.